For most of modern history, we have been taught a very clean and comfortable story about civilization. According to that story, humans lived as scattered hunter-gatherers for tens of thousands of years, barely surviving, barely thinking beyond the next meal. Then, almost suddenly, around 5,000 to 6,000 years ago, civilization appeared. Agriculture emerged in a few predictable river valleys. Writing was invented. Cities formed. Technology slowly climbed upward from stone to bronze to iron. It is a simple, linear story. And for a long time, it felt safe. But what if that story is wrong? What if civilization did not begin when we think it did? What if complex societies rose, flourished, and vanished long before history officially begins? And what if the evidence for this has been in front of us the entire time, ignored not because it is weak, but because it is deeply uncomfortable? This is the story of a forgotten civilization that does not fit our timeline, does not obey our assumptions, and could force us to rewrite everything we think we know about the human past. It begins not with a city, but with a problem. Archaeology relies heavily on layers. Deeper layers are older, upper layers are younger. Over time, this method has helped us build a relative timeline of human activity. But occasionally, researchers encounter objects that seem completely out of place. Tools to advance for the layer they are found in. Stone structures that show signs of engineering far beyond what should have been possible at the time. Precise alignments, advanced stone cutting, and evidence of planning that contradicts the accepted technological level of ancient humans for decades. These anomalies were dismissed as errors, hoaxes, or misunderstandings. But as more discoveries accumulated, the pattern became harder to ignore. One of the most unsettling discoveries came from southeastern Turkey. In the mid-1990s, archaeologists began excavating a hill known as Göbekli Tepe. At first glance, it looked like nothing more than a natural mound. But beneath the soil, they uncovered massive stone pillars arranged in circular formations. Some of these pillars weighed up to 20 tons. They were carved with detailed reliefs of animals, lions, snakes, birds, scorpions, rendered with an artistic skill that suggested symbolic meaning, not random decoration. Then came the date. Göbekli Tepe was built around 9600 BCE. That makes it over 11,500 years old. This alone shattered expectations. According to mainstream theory, humans at that time were nomadic hunter-gatherers. They should not have had permanent architecture, let alone monumental stone construction. They should not have had the organizational capacity to quarry, transport, and erect multi-ton pillars. And yet, there it was, undeniable and precisely dated. Even more disturbing was what Göbekli Tepe implied. The site shows no evidence of agriculture at the time it was first built. No domesticated plants, no permanent living spaces, no trash pits. Consistent with a settled population, this suggests that large groups of humans gathered periodically not to survive but to build, to perform rituals, to coordinate labor on a scale previously thought impossible for pre-agricultural societies. In other words, civilization, or something very close to it, may have come before farming, not after. And Göbekli Tepe is not alone. Across the world, there are sites that hint at an advanced level of organization far earlier than expected. In South America, massive stone structures in Peru display stone blocks cut with precision so tight that even a razor blade cannot fit between them. These stones are often irregular in shape, yet they lock together perfectly, requiring advanced planning and stoneworking knowledge. In Egypt, the Great Pyramid displays mathematical and engineering precision that still challenges modern understanding. Its alignment to true north is accurate to a fraction of a degree. The scale of its construction suggests not just manpower, but sophisticated logistics, surveying, and planning. Officially, these structures are attributed to civilizations we know: Egyptians, Andean cultures, Mesopotamians. But there is a growing question beneath the surface. Did these civilizations inherit knowledge? When ancient cultures speak about their origins, they rarely describe themselves as inventors. Instead, they speak of teachers, civilizing heroes, beings who arrived after a great catastrophe and taught humanity how to farm, build, measure time, and understand the sky. In Mesopotamia, the Sumerians spoke of the Apkallu, wise beings who brought knowledge after a great flood. In Mesoamerica, the Maya and Aztecs spoke of Quetzalcoatl, a figure associated with knowledge, astronomy, and civilization. In Egypt, Thoth was credited with mathematics, writing, and science. These stories are often dismissed as myth. But myths are not random. They are cultural memories encoded in narrative form. When similar stories appear across civilizations that had no contact with each other, it raises an uncomfortable possibility. What if these myths are distorted memories of a real advanced culture that existed before recorded history? One of the strongest pieces of evidence comes from a source many historians avoid discussing seriously: ancient maps. In 1513, a Turkish admiral named Piri Reis compiled a world map based on much older sources. Portions of this map show the coastlines of Africa and South America with surprising accuracy. But the most controversial aspect is what appears to be a depiction of Antarctica. Ice-free. Antarctica has been covered in ice for at least 6,000 years, and likely much longer. Modern science did not confirm its shape until the 20th century, using satellites and radar. And yet, here it is, seemingly mapped centuries earlier, from even older data. If this interpretation is correct, it implies the existence of a global mapping tradition predating known civilizations. Mapping requires mathematics, geometry, long-distance travel, a deep understanding of Earth itself. That is not the work of primitive societies. Then there is the question of cataclysm. Around 12,800 years ago, Earth experienced a sudden and dramatic climate shift known as the Younger Dryas. Temperatures dropped rapidly, ice sheets advanced, sea levels fluctuated violently. Evidence suggests massive wildfires, extinctions, and potentially even impacts from cosmic debris. For coastal civilizations, if they existed, this would have been catastrophic. Today, more than 70% of Earth's landmass lies underwater. Compared to the end of the last ice age, entire coastlines are gone. Any cities built near ancient shores would now be submerged, erased from easy detection. This creates a troubling gap in the archaeological record. We search deserts and plains for ancient cities, but we rarely search the ocean floor with the same intensity. When we do, we sometimes find strange anomalies: submerged stone structures, geometric formations, and ancient harbors now tens of meters below sea level. Mainstream archaeology argues caution, and rightly so. Natural processes can create surprising shapes, but caution can also become denial when evidence threatens the foundation of an established model, and the model is under strain. If humans were capable of organizing massive construction projects 11,500 years ago, then our definition of civilization is wrong. If advanced knowledge existed before known cultures, then history is not a straight line of progress, it is a cycle. A rise, a collapse, and a forgetting. This forgotten civilization, if it existed, would not have looked like modern society. It would not have had smartphones or electricity, but it may have possessed advanced knowledge of astronomy, geometry, agriculture, and engineering. Knowledge gained not through machines, but through long observation, trial, and refinement. And when disaster struck, whether through climate change, floods, or impacts that knowledge would have survived only in fragments, passed down through stories encoded in myths, preserved in stone monuments whose true purpose was forgotten. This idea is deeply unsettling, especially for modern audiences, because it suggests that we are not as unique as we think. It suggests that intelligence, complexity, and technological sophistication can rise naturally and fall just as easily. That progress is not guaranteed. That civilization is fragile. And perhaps most unsettling of all, it suggests that we may be repeating a pattern. As we continue to uncover older sites, push back timelines, and reevaluate ancient achievements. The question is no longer whether something existed before our known civilizations. The question is how much of it existed and how much we have already lost. And this is only the beginning of the evidence. If the idea of a forgotten civilization sounds extraordinary, it is because it challenges a belief we rarely question, that history always moves forward. We assume progress is permanent, that once knowledge is gained, it can never be truly lost. But the deeper we look into both ancient evidence and modern examples, the more fragile that assumption becomes. In the last few centuries alone, entire libraries have been destroyed, languages have gone extinct, and complex technologies have disappeared when societies collapsed. If this can happen in the age of writing and global communication, imagine how easily knowledge could vanish in a prehistoric world. This is where mainstream archaeology begins to push back. Critics argue that extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. They point out that no written records exist from this supposed lost civilization. No confirmed tools that clearly surpass the technology of the time. No cities we can point to and definitively label as the origin of advanced knowledge. And on the surface, this criticism is fair, but it relies on a dangerous assumption that advanced knowledge must look modern. A civilization does not need steel, engines, or electronics to be sophisticated. Knowledge of astronomy, geometry, climate cycles, navigation, and large-scale engineering can exist without machines. In fact, some of the most impressive ancient achievements were accomplished with tools we still struggle to fully understand. Consider the precision of ancient astronomy. Long before telescopes, ancient cultures tracked planetary motion with remarkable accuracy. Stone circles, pyramids, and temples across the world are aligned to solstices, equinoxes, and stellar events. These alignments are not rough approximations. Many are so precise that even modern engineers struggle to replicate them without advanced instruments. This level of accuracy requires long-term observation across generations. It requires record-keeping, standardized measurements, and a shared understanding of celestial mechanics. In other words, it requires institutional knowledge. And institutional knowledge does not appear overnight. Another objection raised by skeptics is that ancient humans simply lacked the brain power for such complexity. But this idea has been thoroughly dismantled by neuroscience. Anatomically modern humans have existed for at least 200,000 years. Our brains have not significantly changed in that time. Intelligence did not suddenly switch on 6,000 years ago. What changed was not our minds, but our circumstances. If a stable, resource-rich environment allowed a population to settle, specialize, and observe the world deeply, advanced knowledge could emerge. And if that environment later collapsed, that knowledge could vanish just as quickly. This brings us back to the Younger Dryas. The Younger Dryas was not a slow, gentle climate shift. It was abrupt and violent. In some regions, temperatures dropped by several degrees in a matter of decades. Massive ice melt triggered floods on a continental scale. Entire ecosystems collapsed. For a civilization concentrated near coasts and rivers, this would have been an extinction-level event. Flood myths appear in nearly every ancient culture. From Mesopotamia to India to the Americas, stories speak of a great deluge that destroyed the world and forced humanity to begin again. These stories are often dismissed as metaphor or coincidence, but the Younger Dryas provides a real geological event capable of inspiring exactly such memories, not as literal history, but as inherited trauma. When survivors pass stories to their children, and those children pass them onward, details blur, timelines stretch, facts transform into symbols. But the core message remains: there was a world before, and it was lost. Underwater archaeology is now beginning to support this idea. As evident, sonar mapping and deep-sea exploration improve, researchers are finding submerged landscapes that were once dry land, ancient river systems, shorelines, terraces that resemble human construction. In places like the Gulf of Cambay off the coast of India, sonar scans have revealed geometric structures at depths consistent with Ice Age sea levels. In Japan, the Yonaguni Monument remains one of the most controversial underwater sites ever discovered. Massive stone terraces, steps, and flat surfaces sit beneath the ocean, resembling a man-made structure. Some geologists argue it is natural. Others insist the angles and symmetry are too precise to dismiss. The truth may lie somewhere in between. Natural formations can be modified by humans. Over time, erosion can blur those modifications. After 10,000 years underwater, even a city would lose many of its defining features, which raises a crucial point. We may be looking for the wrong kind of evidence. If a pre-Ice Age civilization exists